something that a lot of us have thought about. What does God look like? What is God to you? I've had these conversations with people, fascinating conversations. And so I'm so thrilled to welcome to the show. She's in our virtual green room, and her name's Reverend Marcia Cope Fleischman. Her book is called If God is Love, Why Do I Feel So Bad? Considering Our Images of God. Reverend Marcia, thanks so much for coming on.
Hi, Kate. Call me Marcia.
Okay, so Marcia, it's interesting. You and I had a great off-air conversation, and I think it's true. You heard what I said there at the top. I think from the time when you're a kid, and depending on, how you were raised and what kind of religion and all of that, there is that question, though, of what does God look like? And I think that it's different for everyone, and you address that, and you do it so well. Why did you write this book?
Well, a long time ago, probably 15, 20 years ago, I read a book called Good Goats, Bad Goats by Dennis and Matthew Lynn. And Dennis shares that as his image of God changed, so did he. And he started out with an angry, punishing God, and he found himself being very judgmental and angry. And then he began to experience God as a loving, accepting, kind entity. And then he started to change and became more loving and kind. And that just pricked my imagination. That's what started it. And then I began asking people. I would listen to how they talk, and I would ask them what their image of God was. And that started me off. Then I started painting images and collected all the ideas into a book.
Right, which is so fascinating to me. What kind of stories, and we're not going to tell everyone everything because they have to get the book, and then it'll blow you away. You can get it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any place where great books are sold. But what are some of the stories that you heard and what you painted?
Well, something that really impressed me was when we got a new, I was at Broadway Church in Kansas City, and we got a new worship minister, and we practiced hearing from Spirit at Broadway and listening to God. And the worship guy was telling his friend, he said, these people believe they can hear God talking. What do you think? And the guy said, I don't even want God to know where I am, much less listen to him talk. And that just really impacted me, that I thought, what is his image of God that he doesn't even want to know? He doesn't want God to know where he is. And that was one of the stories, but it just really slammed me. And I thought, what are people thinking? And I wanted to dig in there and find out. So anyhow, that's one of the stories, but the book is filled with personal stories of people and their relationships with God and how they've changed or how they've been impacted or what they think of God. So I went with all those personal stories because you can really see that's where the rubber meets the road when we relate to God.
Yeah, boy, no kidding. And I don't think there's any other book out there like it. I kind of did a little mini research, and I couldn't find anything like that.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, conversations about what do you think, but not so much about look and then what your personality's like and what you see coming out of what people are saying. So for you, what does God look like?
Well, I think my interest is not just having people have a cognitive image of God, but a feeling image of God from their heart. And so the change is that we need to change from thinking about God to feeling God's presence. And so what I've come to believe, and where I end up in the book, is that God is a personal energy of love, that we can be full of that energy, and our energy is in God and God's energy is in us. I know it's kind of difficult to imagine God as energy because that's not a form or a picture, except that it can translate into images. Such as God as a loving mother, God as a loving father. And Jesus used that image all the time, God as a loving father. But I end up with God. It helps me understand the phrase, I am in God and God is in me, that it's God as energy of love that lives in us. And that's what we feel from people. We can feel people's love and feel their energy of love in us. So God is an image like that to me.
Yeah, absolutely. The name of the book is If God is Love, Why Do I Feel So Bad Considering Our Images of God? We're speaking with Reverend Marcia Cope Fleischman. And Marcia, what do you hope the takeaway is for people who get your book? And I think you're weaving it into this conversation.
Well, I want people to really understand that they can feel God's presence and love and be guided by God. Can I tell the story of my friend Ellen? From the
Yes.
book. This is one of my favorite stories. Ellen and I have been friends since sixth grade. We were always looking for God together. We even visited a couple of churches in our little hometown, and we found Jesus during the Jesus movement of the 70s. And she and I have both been connected to God since. But she tells a story that I just think is incredible, and I don't know that she even recognizes how amazing it is. It's connected with the old story of the prodigal son, where a rich man has two sons, and one stays at home with him, and the other takes his inheritance and goes off and lives wildly. And you can imagine that the father is watching for his son to return home because he misses him. And the son finally spends all the money, loses all of his friends, loses everything, and he's eating pig food. He's watching pigs as a job, and he's eating pig food. And he says, well, my father's servants eat better than this. I'm going home. And there his father is watching for him. And he comes home, and he's celebrated and welcomed and not punished, but just loved. And anyhow, so that story is like, does God still do that today? Well, my friend Ellen in college worked at a little cafe in Columbia, Missouri, the Busy Bee. And she worked for a couple that were the managers. She worked there all 4 years and then went her own way. Well, about 25 years afterwards, she is connected with God, and God puts the impression on her heart that she needs to find the woman, Catherine Ann. And Ellen's like, okay. And when God puts something on your heart, it presses on you till you get it done. So she starts looking for Catherine Ann in all ways that she knows how. She hears that the couple's been divorced. She finally finds Catherine Ann's husband, and they've lost touch. But he says the last he knew, she was waiting tables in Grandview. Grandview is a little town south of Kansas City, and on the map, it looks like a spot in the road. So months pass, and Ellen's coming to Kansas City to do some work. And she decides, I'll stop in Grandview and see if I can find Catherine Ann. Well, lo and behold, she gets to Grandview. There are 3 exits off the highway. It's a town of 25,000 people. And she's, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? But she sees a building that looks like a hotel, and it looks like it has a restaurant on the main floor. So she thought, I'll start there. So she goes over, and the restaurant's closed. So she said, well, I'll go in the hotel, but I have to make up a story. So she goes in the hotel, and there's a man at the counter. Well, you have to realize this has been going on for months, that she's had this on her heart. But she says to the man, she makes up a story and says, well, I have a friend that used to wait tables here, and I wonder if you know anything about her. Her name's Catherine Ann. He says, oh, Kathy? She's in the back. I'll go get her. So Catherine Ann comes out from the back and says, Ellen, what are you doing here? Ellen says, is there a place we can go talk? So they sit in the lobby in a corner, and Ellen says, Catherine Ann, is there some reason God would send me to find you? And Catherine Ann burst into tears and said, I used to be really close to God, but I've gotten in with a group of friends, and they don't really care. They're not interested in being with God, and I've drifted away. So God sent Ellen to bring Catherine Ann home.
Wow.
I just love that story.
Yeah, you can feel the power in that story, and how interesting that happened, that reconnection. And you're right. That's probably one of the best examples in your book. And you've written other books, Angels I've Seen, Wild Woman Theology, I Am the Arms of Loving Mother God, Angels Everywhere, which is a children's book. And you can get these books the same place on Amazon. Will you write another book connected to this?
Actually, yes. I've already outlined a book that I want to write about. I'm in Integral Christian Network, and we practice whole body mystical awakening. It's a meditation that I just love and has connected me even more with God. But in the meditative state, there are different ways of praying. And I'm going to write a book that's called Prayer Without Words. And it's how to pray without words for people. So that's my next endeavor.
Wow. Well, we can't wait for that. I said it at the top. I'll say it again. This is a book that you should pick up. If God is love, why do I feel so bad? Considering our images of God. Reverend Marcia Fleischman, thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me. This has been great fun, and I hope people dig into their spirits and find what God is, how God is loving them.
Absolutely. And thanks to all of you for listening to this interview and this show. Make it count, everybody.
Visit www.greatwritersmedia.com. Email us at info@greatwritersmedia.com. Call us at 877-600-5469. Subscribe now.